Hello, everybody, and welcome to another special edition of Conversations with Authors, or in this case, authors and doctors, veterinarians. I'm your host, Paula Farmer. Thank you for joining us live or later, if you're joining us later in the archives. Either way, we really at Book Passage appreciate your support, supporting these events, supporting our stores, supporting authors, and buying books. Speaking of which, I know you're going to want to buy this book, our featured book today. And so we've made it very convenient. There's a link on our YouTube channel, and you can go directly to our online store and get it. Otherwise, feel free to come in San Francisco, Corte Madera, and browse and then buy. We love that as well. And you can also call either one of our stores, and a bookseller will be happy to fulfill your order. Also, for today's event, you're probably going to have a lot of comments and questions. Feel free to put that in the chat area, and I promise we will get to it either during the event or before we round up the event. Today's featured book, What It Takes to Save a Life, was born out of Dr. Kwane Stewart's questioning of his career as a veterinarian when he saw a homeless man with a flea-infested dog outside of a convenience store. In a moment of spontaneous generosity, he offered to examine the dog and treat him for free. It was the first step and now 9-year journey that has taken Dr. Kwane from Skid Row to San Francisco and beyond to care for pets and their humans who are living on the streets. In the book, Dr. Kwane shows how our four-legged, featured, scaled, feathered, scaled, and swimming family members, these are dogs, cats, fish, birds, reptiles, and other animals that live side by side with us, provide more than just companionship. Joining Dr. Kwane Stewart is a veterinarian with more than 20 years of experience. He is the founder of Project Street Pet, a nonprofit organization devoted to caring for the lives of the homeless and their animals. Joining him in conversation, graciously agreeing in between flights, as a good friend of his, Dr. Marty Becker, also known as America's veterinarian. He has spent his life working toward better health for pets and the people who love them. He is the founder of Fear Free, which works to prevent and alleviate fear, anxiety, and stress in pets by inspiring and educating the people who care for them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to their very capable hands. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Paula, I have been to yours. I live in northern Idaho. I have been to your stores in the Ferry Building down there and love your stores. And Paula, I want to compliment you on saying veterinarian correctly, at least the first time. That's one of the hardest words to say because it has 6 syllables. So if you ever want to, most people say veterinarian or doc. They can't remember our names, right? Kwan will come in, doc, hey doc. But if you want to do it right, you just say veteran and then an arian on the end, veterinarian. It's a hard job. It's, if you think about being a veterinarian, we're going to dive into this with Kwan, typically takes 8 years of school. By the time you're done, you've lost 8 years of earning capacity. And my sister's a physician. She's got it so easy. She's a nephrologist. One species, one organ. So you said in your introduction, it's not uncommon for somebody to see a kitten and then see a geriatric dog and then see a parakeet and see a hamster. It's an incredibly exciting but difficult. Your pediatrician, your gerontologist, your behaviorist, your bereavement counselor, your internist, your surgeon, your pharmacist, your radiologist. They've always said if you had a zombie apocalypse, you better not have my sister. You better have one of us, because to us, a human's just another animal. And today, Kwan, it was funny. I was listening in on, there was a live thing from Adam Chrisman at a veterinary hospital in New Jersey. He mentioned your book, and he asked one of the veterinarians there that had 2 teenage kids, "Did you read any of the James Harriet's books?" And he said, "No, I haven't." And there's kind of a generational thing where I read James Harriet books, got me interested in being a veterinarian. Other people remember when Emergency Vets was on, and that got some people in. in reading your book, I think you're going to inspire a whole new group of people from what it takes to save a life that think, you know what, this is my calling.
Is this where I take it away? Because I don't know what to say to that. I want people to know, before I jump into some of this, the relationship you and I have. And I'll share a quick anecdote before we jump into more of the book. But and I don't know how much of this you remember, Marty, but I was probably young 30s, mid 30s, about to start my shelter career, and I wanted to start writing. I found it cathartic, and I wasn't very good at it, and my grammar, my syntax, and everything about it probably wasn't very good. But just telling the stories, putting stuff to paper, journaling it really, but telling the stories of some of the people I met and some of the remarkable pets I came across and some of the really neat treatments. You know, I'm still this somewhat young veterinarian, and the field, the profession is so new and fresh to me. And so I started putting this stuff down, and I didn't know you, and you're this sort of already bigger than life veterinarian. You're on Good Morning America all the time. You've written I don't know how many books, and I cold called you by email and sent you a story. And within a few days, you read it, you turned it around, and you emailed me back some very warm, encouraging words. And so that really was the first step in getting here. I don't know, honestly, I say this with all sincerity. I don't know if I would be here without your encouragement and mentorship, because it's so easy to discourage somebody who's trying something new, whatever it is. I didn't feel like I really knew how to write. I just wanted to do it. And I thought to myself, you know what? I want to write a book now. I think I want to write a book. And I hadn't even written a full story. And I'm telling myself, I'm going to write and publish a book. Again, that was probably 15, 16 years ago. And you and I have been friends ever since. You've been by my side. And I want to thank you. We can get into all the major accomplishments you've done. That would take up more than an hour, but Fear Free is one of them. I am fully immersed in it. I believe in it. And anyone who's watching or listening should take the time to look Fear Free up, and how you can incorporate it into your pet's life. Seek out Fear Free certified veterinarians, groomers, care professionals. If you just spend 15 minutes reading about Fear Free, it will change you, and therefore change your pet's life. With that, I have to quickly give a disclaimer to anybody who's listening. I have a 6-month old. My wife and I have a 6-month old baby. And this little dude is giving us a run for our money. I mean, I, and it's probably every other night we have one of those nights. And I mean, I woke up the other day and I couldn't remember, when you're sleep deprived, you just can't recall certain words. And I was talking to my 7-year-old daughter and I couldn't remember the word bedroom. I don't, the word bedroom completely escaped my mind. And, you know, Amber and I, we pull shifts, we trade shifts, and that night was my shift. And I woke up, I didn't know what decade I was in. And I just look at him and I say, like, why are you trying to kill me? Like, I mean, I'm your dad. Why are you why are you trying to end me? And he just sort of looked at me, stared at me blankly, and then pooped his pants. And that was the start of my day. So if I forget a word or I don't know where I'm at for a moment, just you have to give me a mulligan. I'm trying to keep it together. Uh, but as we start the banter back and forth, Marty, I think what I'll do is just quickly share the origin story of the so-called street vet, and that's really what the book is based on. And we opened with the quick story about the convenience store. I just wanted to go a little deeper into that because I there were two things I wanted to be when I was a child: a superhero and a veterinarian. The whole superhero thing didn't work out. I don't the towel as a cape and me busting my head on the walls inside the house, that just didn't go very far. So I took the veterinary path. But every superhero, I guess, sort of has its origin story, and although I'm still not that, I did this work in secrecy, the street work, walking the streets, searching for homeless individuals and their pets. I did it not quietly, but secretly for the better part of 6 years. I didn't share it with anybody. And the reason is, as I reflect on that, the reason I never told anybody, including my own family, including my own partner, including my younger brother, who I'm very close with, and today now runs my charity. I didn't even tell him. I didn't want to be judged myself about the work I was doing. I didn't want to be at a dinner party, for example, and get asked by somebody there that I half know. So I heard you walk the streets and you help homeless pets. Why would you do that? Why are you doing that? I don't think they deserve to have pets. They can't take care of themselves. I didn't want the judgment to come to me. I didn't want to have to defend myself on why I was doing it. It was my time, it was my gift to these people, and it was a way of healing for me. I just didn't want any negative energy around it. So I didn't tell a soul for years, and finally ended up sharing it. But going back to the origin story, right? The whole superhero has an origin story. The most common question I get is, why did you start doing it? I started doing it because as was pointed out at the top of the call here, I wanted to quit being a veterinarian altogether. And Marty, I don't even know if you know this, but when I was doing the shelter work from 2007 to 2012 in Modesto, California, it happened to time out perfectly with the recession, by the way. And municipal shelters are already bad enough. And a lot of people, they don't know, they don't quite understand the distinction between a no-kill shelter and a rescue and a municipality. Working as a county veterinarian at a municipality, I don't have the luxury of turning a pet away. Everything that shows up on our doorstep, I have to take in. In fact, you didn't even have to give us an explanation. You could show up at the front door, drop the leash, walk away, and get in your car and drive away without ever sharing a word with us. And during the recession in Modesto, which is sort of a rural, lower economic part of California, they were hit very hard, and people were dumping their animals by the dozens every day. And we were euthanizing dozens and dozens of animals every day. By 10 a.m. some mornings, my team and I had euthanized 60 animals. And it was destroying me. That's not why I wanted to be a vet. That 7-year-old boy that dreamed of one day doing this, it was starting to kill that little person inside of me. And on this particular day, I thought I was going to quit. And not just the shelter, I was going to quit the profession. And I had ideas or plans to go off and do something entirely different, like become a fitness trainer. And I sat in front of 7-Eleven on this day contemplating, and my first thought was just to drive home and write my letter of resignation to the shelter. And as I was mulling over options, I walked into 7-Eleven, a place that I frequently visit for gas or coffee, and was walking out with my coffee. And to the left of me, as I was walking out of the door, as you will sometimes see, an unhoused gentleman was sitting sort of sleeping in the corner with his pet. And the the part I regret about this story is that I had seen this gentleman before, maybe 5 or 6 times before, and I had walked right by him, ignored him. In fact, you become almost so dismissive of the homeless population that you don't want to make eye contact with them for fear they're going to call you over. But I broke pattern on this day. I stepped over. I introduced myself. I said, "I'm Kwane Stewart. I'm a veterinarian. I see you have uh, a pet with a really bad skin issue." And as I got closer, it was just fleas, Marty. It was nothing but a really bad flea allergy. And as you know, chronic fleas can destroy a dog's skin. This dog in its hind end looked like a burn victim. The hair was gone, the skin was red and bumpy and infected. The dog was miserable. The man was miserable, and he sat there with this exasperated look on his face and said, "I don't know what to do. She's had this for a while, and I just don't have the money to take care of it." And I said, "If you're here tomorrow, I'll come back with something that I think might help." And I did as promised, returned, and it was $3 out of my pocket and 5 more minutes of my time for a basic flea treatment. And then I saw the same dog about 12 days later, and the dog was transformed in that short amount of time with a $3 flea treatment. She was wagging her tail, and the man sitting in the exact same spot looking up at me with tears in his eyes just said, "Thank you for not ignoring me." And that was the day. That was the day that this whole journey was born. I did not obviously quit the profession. I didn't even quit the shelter. I carried on for 2 more years. We ended up cutting the euthanasia rate in half. And that shelter, by the way, had one of the worst euthanasia rates in the country. And by the time we were done, it was one of the better shelters in the country. We had doubled the adoption rate, and we had built a brand new state-of-the-art shelter in Modesto. It was no longer a pound. Like my vision when I was talking to the board of supervisors trying to get the funding. I said, I want a shelter that's like a library or a park. It's part of the community where people can bring their families and find their next family member. And we did that. We built a very nice, beautiful shelter where every dog had its own run, not 10 or 12 squeezed into a little steel cage. And while my time was cut a little shorter than perhaps I could have endured, I did exactly 5 years to the day because that's what my pension vested. And I had to get out for mental health purposes, but I'm very proud of those years. And it was during those years that I gained my appreciation for the underprivileged and doing my part to try and change things.
Kwan, don't get me crying on this thing. Got to promise that because you're getting close. Okay, maybe I've got a lot of estrogen since I'm getting close to 70, but you are very unique. So I've been in a veterinary profession. I graduated in 1980. So what's that? 43 years. Been married 45 years to the love of my life, who's a big fan of yours, as is our whole family, Kwan. You have a very unique career as a veterinarian. So I would describe you as like a Swiss Army knife of veterinarians. And first of all, there are not many veterinarians in the United States. I don't know how many Sophie Stadium or Levi Stadium holds in the Bay Area, but they probably hold every companion animal veterinarian in the United States. There are more practicing attorneys in New York City than there are companion animal veterinarians in the United States. So somewhere it varies, but think around 80,000. That's it. So most of us go out now. Most go in companion animal medicine. Some are equine, some are zoo, some are mixed animal, some are poultry. But Kwan, you go out and you're in shelter medicine. Then you go from Modesto and you go Hollywood on us. You are actually the chief veterinary officer for American Humane, and you're on set with Tom Cruise standing next to you. And then you've been in private practice and general practice. And so, you know, general practice, shelter work, Hollywood work, no animals were harmed, and street work. And I think it's really interesting that the mental health issues are really, really front and center for the veterinary profession. It's a very stressful profession. But isn't it funny that you saved yourself? I know it's kind of a canned term, but you kind of saved yourself at that same moment. You saved that person and that dog. And was it then? Because you're exactly right. That argument, they can't take care of themselves, and why do they have a pet? And then now when you have, of course, people know you from the CNN hero. You've been nominated as one of the CNN heroes, and if I was a betting person, I think you have a pretty good chance of winning this award. How do you answer that now when people read your book or somebody's like they shouldn't have they shouldn't have pets? Tell us about some of the people you meet in your work and how you answer that.
I've had to craft this answer over the years because you almost have to squeeze into an elevator pitch and be very concise because these days it seems like people's attention span or it's a TikTok 30 second and then you're out. But I just quickly tell people that in my experience they are better pet parents than 90% of the people I meet in clinic. And they are. It's not an exaggeration. I'm not embellishing. I and if they want an example, I give this very quick example. How many times would you give up your own meal to feed your pet? Have you ever given up your own meal to feed your pet? Would you give up a warm bed to get out of the rain, but the requirement is to leave your dog behind? So I can't tell you how many people have refused transitional housing. So not just one night in a warm bed and a shower, but weeks and weeks of that because they would not accept your dog. And that person tells me, I will sleep in my car and I'll continue to live on this corner until I can find a place for both of us. So yes, they're short on resources. We know that. A lot of us are these days, as you know, Marty, right? How many of us have so much disposable income that if our dog were hit by a car tonight, we could take them in and pay for that initial $3,000 triage, and then maybe another $4 or $5,000 for the fracture repair and so on. Are a lot of us in a position to do that? Because if you're not, then I can make the same argument against you. So a lot of us are paycheck to paycheck. That's just unfortunately where it is. So yes, these people struggle with resources, but they have all of us when it comes to the relationship and the bond. And again, that is no exaggeration. I tell people all the time that parents that I meet on the street are better parents than I am. I go away to work 8 or 10 hours a day, and I leave Cora in the backyard, who's trying to jump over and see if she hears a garage door opening or dad's footsteps or peeling the curtains back. And she just sits and waits for me. Our pets pine for us, but these pets on the street, they don't have that problem. They're with their person every day, all the time.
You took exactly what I was going to say, that they, Kwan, you and I can get pretty busy. And I was doing a podcast yesterday about base paws with Dr. Ernie Ward. And base paws is a genetics company. So we can look things like dilated cardiomyopathy. We can see certain conditions now that, beyond just your outward physical exam, and then doing a CBC, a complete blood count, and a chemistry profile. Now we can even go into the DNA of these pets and look for things. But one of the signs of dilated cardiomyopathy, so an enlarged heart, is an increase in the breathing rate. And if I were to ask people that were listening, tell me how many times per minute your dog breathes, or could you tell it if it was up 20 or 30%? They would have no idea. But those people, they know every eyelash, every one of the 4 rows of whisker on their muzzle. They've it's just like a heartbeat to them. It's like a vital sign. And Kwan, I haven't done the work that you've done, not even close to it. But the times that I've been there, that that unconditional love, that limitless affection, that to die for loyalty, if you want to see it exhibited. And one of the things, Kwan, I think it's interesting. My dean, I went to veterinary school to be a dairy practitioner, and the dean gave a talk on the human animal bond the first day, and I went, oh, I'm going to be a companion animal practitioner. So 14 years of wanting to be a vet, I was like age 6, you're age 7, out the window, I'm a companion animal practitioner. And what is that bond, that inexhaustible, irrefutable source of energy? We've heard it said there's only one greatest pet in the world, and every family has him or her, or every individual has him or her. But what I want people to know, when you pet your dog, you can't get this looking out a sliding glass door passing a dog on the street, but you have close physical contact, intimacy with a dog. You get this release of positive biochemicals. You get oxytocin, the hug hormone. You get serotonin, the runner's high. You get prolactin. Think of a mother nursing a baby. And you get phenylethylamine, that active ingredient in chocolate. And the great thing is the dog gets exactly the reciprocal biochemical spot treatment. We're not a tick that sucks the life force out of him. It's, if you think about it, there has been another domesticated species in 5,000 years, and only dogs have invaded our hearts and homes in mass. How do you see that when you're on the street? Because I've seen the videos of you. You go with a pretty small little kit. I mean, this ain't no giant RV that's been retrofitted into a vet clinic like we'll see sometimes at shelters. How do you come up to people on the, never seen you before? How do you approach these people and their pets?
It's not a whole lot different than my 7-Eleven encounter. And I've polished it over the years, but it's really straightforward. And it's a good question, because I'll tell you, Marty, sometimes I am in Skid Row, where I do a lot of my work in LA, and that is just it's the largest homeless encampment in the country. We're talking 5,000-7,000 homeless folks within a few square blocks. in one of the richest cities in the world, by the way. I mean, Skid Row, for those that don't know, is almost a stone's throw from downtown, which is almost a stone's throw from Beverly Hills. So right, right there, you just have this. As one homeless man described, he's like, it's just like zombie land. And if you're in there, it has this bizarre feel to it because it's almost like there's no traffic laws, and there's cars sort of broke down and parked out, and people doing any manner of things, and it's almost like you never see a police officer drive through there. And it just has its own set of rules. One of them being, which is an official rule, the sundowner rule. So the sundowner rule states that uh, that if you are unhoused and think of any other city in the country, and you set up your tent for the night, that you have to break that thing down by morning so that the sidewalks are open and that vendors and businesses can carry out normal course of business, right? So people can walk and get through. The sundowner rule doesn't exist in Skid Row. They abolished that. And so you've had people in Skid Row live on these street corners for years. 5, 7, 10 years, people have occupied the same spot. So I'm weaving my way through all of this, and I'll turn a corner uh, down an alleyway, and behind a dumpster, someone has a makeshift tent set up, and I hear a dog barking behind the tent. And without them seeing me, I will just announce myself. Hello, my name's Dr. Kwane Stewart. I'm a veterinarian. I just walk the area and I look for pets that have medical needs. And if your pet has any, I would love to take a look at no cost to you. And I'll see the tent peel back and the dog come out. And as soon as I sort of make that first eye-to-eye contact, I take out my stethoscope, I get to one knee, and I start my exam. And as soon as I do that, I think they see that one, I am who I say I am, and I'm very professional in my approach, just like you're in my clinic, a paying client. And then I just start to talk through the exam process. I'm taking a listen to the heart. I'm going to palpate the abdomen. I see the skin looks healthy, and they're glowing. They're engaged. It's like someone dropped out of the sky and is offering to give free care to the thing they love most in the world.
So
And
they're territorial, just like when uh, the Instacart people come to your house. They're territorial. I mean, that area behind the dumpster, that's their territory, right? And that tent that they're protecting. So, Quan, do you wear? You're in a Cherokee scrub right now. Is that kind of the same kind of scrub you would wear? Would you be dressed similarly with maybe just a stethoscope?
yeah, I wear a scrub top. It sort of gives me that semi-professional look, and it's like you described. It's a little tiny bag I sling over my shoulder, and in that tiny bag, I have my stethoscope and some basic supplies, vaccines, and I can treat about 80% of the things I see on the street out of that tiny bag.
Quan, I know you were Division I college athlete in track, I believe, and you're tall. Is part of your getting down. I Because from Fear Free, you don't have the mistake people make when they greet pets. I went over to help with Ukrainian pets almost a year ago, and they were getting thousands of dog bites of pets coming into Romania and Moldova and Poland because they were walking just like people do. Walk up, see the dog, put their hand out. Can I pet it? Direct eye contact, looming big, something in their face. So you're getting down on a knee to make yourself smaller, make yourself more probably not so intimidating to both pet and pet parent, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, this is stuff I've just learned in years of doing it. But I've also, as you and I will banter over a drink, I've incorporated a lot of Fear Free. And I think I was doing it maybe unbeknownst to myself for a while, some of the fear-free philosophy and techniques, like the thing that you share, and it's you share the stat and people automatically listen is what is a dog's biggest fear, right? It's a fear of falling or fear of heights.
Yeah,
And I've never had to work on an exam table.
yeah.
There's no exam table to place these dogs on. I've always come down to their level. And the other thing is, and we talked about this in an article I wrote, I just exercise the most patience I can. I take my time. I have spent 2 hours with a person right there next to their home, on a street corner next to a traffic light. And I'll give them as much time as I can to talk through any ailments. And the best part of it, Marty, is it starts out business-like, professional, as any first encounter does in our line of work. But when I'm done, it's very personal. And I, I can't tell you how many times I've shed tears, or I've given hugs or received hugs, or how many times somebody has offered their last dollar. It's all the money they have in the world. They've offered their last dollar to me to pay for the treatment. And uh, when you think about the work we do, when and I'm not going to demean any of our clients, and that's not the intent of this, but we've all been there where we know one of our clients has the means and has the resources. We make a recommendation for something like a dental, because the teeth are dangling out of the mouth. And what do we hear? I don't want to put them through that. Or the other excuse is, I think they're too old. I have never heard that from these people. They would take the shoes off their feet, their sleeping bag, whatever they own, to ensure their pet gets the treatment. And of course, I've never taken that dollar or two or whatever they have, but it's the gesture, it's the offer that they make to me that tells me so much about them.
Kwan, I want to ask you one thing, and then I want to get to some of the questions we're getting in the chat. But when those people, again, I hate cliches, either in writing or speaking, but I wrote a book called The Healing Power of Pets, and part of this is not just healing the pet, but healing the person. But you have that 2 hour talk, and that's some of these stories in this book is where they have never had a chance to tell you about this pet that is not an animal. It's not even a pet, I should call it. It's a family member. It's a child. It's if something could be even greater than a child. I mean, it's their everything. The one thing that's dependable, and you've had you could run down a list of celebrities you've met, and of course they all, in talking to them, whether he was doing Good Morning America, I'd meet a lot of them, and they love their pets maybe more than most people because there was nobody slipping a script to them. There was no hidden agenda. There was no posturing for personal gain. There was no performances. Everything you say, ha ha ha, we laugh like crazy and are really interested. But that pure agape love, like, do you ever dream about one of these that sticks with you, like that you outlined in the book that just so could you tell us a story that could just hit you at that deep soul level, maybe to that 7-year-old kid that wanted to be a veterinarian because you wanted to help animals and you wanted to love them and have them love you back?
I, I well, I have a bunch. The hardest part of writing the book was actually um, taking what is hundreds of stories and encounters, like I've given you a couple, a lot of them like the 7-Eleven encounter that have stayed with me, and condensing them down to my favorite 10 stories, which I included in the book. I so yes, I'm going to quickly choose one that's not going to make me cry because I don't want to do that either. Then I don't have any tissue around. The stories still get me. I'll tell you, it's true. I'll start telling stories, or I'll be delivering a podcast, or in front of kindergartners, right? And I'll sit there and start thinking about this story, and I'll start to tear up, and I'll have to take a minute. There's a saying that I love, that nobody will ever touch you so lightly they won't leave a trace. And there's been a lot of traces left imprinted on me through the years of doing this. But there was a man named Mike I met in San Diego, and Mike owned this beautiful, shiny dachshund named Crazy Girl. He called her Cray Cray. And Mike, when I met him, this is about 5 years ago, was probably in his late 50s, and he was battling colon cancer. He had moved from Denver to California to seek more affordable medical care. And as he described his story, he once had a house and a boat and a nice car, and slowly had to start selling things off for his cancer treatment. Wound up in California, homeless. And when I came across Mike, and examining Crazy Girl, her eyes were glazed over. Why it looked like, if you looked at it, it looked like really bad cataracts. It wasn't that, in fact, but Mike said, she's been bumping into stuff for the last few weeks. She doesn't know where she's going. I think she's losing her vision. She can follow me by scent, and she knows the sound of my cart. He pushed around a little cart with a sleeping bag. but I think something's really wrong. I examined her eyes, and I knew it was more than cataracts. It looked like something on a level of glaucoma. It looked to me like her vision was completely gone. This is outside, and I don't have all the equipment I need. I do have an ophthalmologist friend in San Diego that I got Crazy Girl to, who did a more extensive exam. But before I arranged that exam, Mike looked at me. We're sitting next to the ocean, and as he's tearing up, and by this point he'd showed me his colostomy bag. He told me he didn't have much time to live, and he said, "I would see it's going to happen, Marty." He said, I would gladly keep my cancer if you can restore her vision." And he meant every word of that. Unfortunately, her 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 blindness was irreversible, but it was chronic glaucoma. So as you know, that is a painful, uncomfortable condition. We were able to alleviate her pain, uh, and send Mike with the necessary medication. But that the story didn't end up as well as it could. I will tell you this: Mike at the time said he had a year to live. 3 years later, he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'm still around," and I credit all of it to Crazy Girl.
Yeah, oh man, that's just it's so inspiring. One of the questions that came up on the chat was, do most vets, most vets, unlike human doctors, not practice specialized medicine, so to speak? Well, you just mentioned a specialist, an ophthalmologist. There's over 100 boarded veterinary dentists. There's approximately 100 boarded veterinary dermatologists. There's probably, probably thousands of boarded veterinary internists. There's boarded veterinary radiologists, so pretty much the same. There's boarded oncologists, pretty much the same specialist you see. But here's the problem you run into. I live in, you live in San Diego, a big metropolitan area. I live in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, population 2,000. To get to a specialist is 4 to 5 hours away, and you can't get into them. So you pretty much have to you can't get it. If a dog is hit by a car, has a fall this summer on a hiking trail, he's probably going to have somebody locally that's, and I joke all the time, but it's true though. I'm not a very good veterinarian. Like, you don't want me when I went to Ukraine, don't get me trying to help fix a dog's leg or diagnose something difficult. But there's always people that are a little better. Some other people asked about, can non-vets help with street pet care or fear-free? And I want to answer the fear-free part first. If you go to fearfreehappyhomes.com, you'll see this is a free resource available to all pet parents globally. I think we have fear-free certified people in 77 countries. Anybody out there with a shelter rescue, fearfreeshelters.com is free to all shelters and rescue employees and volunteers. I think we just went over 90,000 people, Kwan, that have taken a 5-hour course. And I think you talked about patience a little bit earlier. Even instant gratification takes too long for me. And I think that was a Carrie said that in Postcards from the Edge, that writer, but no way I would finish one. Somebody asked about, do you think traditional homes and shelters would allow pets? There are things like that. My daughter, Mikkel, who, Kwan, has actually worked with Purina on programs where they help because a lot of people won't leave an abusive relationship because they don't have a home for their pet. They are not going to give up this pet. And by the way, a lot more shelters nationally provide housing for those pets. So they don't want people to have to give up a pet. They'll keep the pet for them if they can temporarily while they're unhoused. So Kwan, 2 questions for you. One about, can you, a non-veterinarian do street vet work? And somebody asked if you divide your professional time between street pets and humans and clinical work. And if you do, what's that look like?
We're always taking volunteers, and I was given a talk last night, and a veterinary student came up. She's a second-year veterinary student. She asked if she could follow me on the streets. I said, absolutely. She has training, of course, which is great. But sometimes I just need people helping carry supplies now. Now the mission has grown. I carry dog food with me, other supplies. We try and hit multiple parts of the city. Sometimes we host clinics, passing out clipboards and helping get people in line and taking basic information. So it all went from a one-man band to now this really somewhat large crusade, which I'm very proud of. And I have street vet teams in Orlando and Atlanta and Washington, D.C., LA, San Diego. We're moving up to San Francisco. So yes, please reach out. You don't have to be a vet. The second part, see here, there, right there, sleep deprivation just kicked in. What was the second part of the
There
question?
you go. There you go. And by the way, I've met some of these. When you go to a conference, Kwan, I have to say you're a little bit of a rock star because people know you from this work you've done. And I think it touches at the very heart of what somebody wants to be a veterinarian. And I think I met the person that does the work in Atlanta, and it's just
Mhm.
I have a feeling it's going to keep like Habitat for Humanity or something. I just know it's going to keep spreading. The second, hey, by the way, Kwan, you're going to laugh at this. So Mikkel had colic, and for 4 months, Mikkel's my daughter, so she's 38 now. For 4 months, she screamed nonstop from start about 10 p.m. and it end about 3 a.m. And my wife and I took turns and we tried all the traditional gripe water, car rides, stuff. Finally, we bought a clinic, and in the basement of this clinic, it was a 100-year-old practice that used to treat everything: cattle, horses, sheep, pigs, swine. And I went down there, and there was some paregoric, which was an old scour medicine for calves that was outlawed about 50 years ago, but it's got a narcotic in it, paregoric. I gave that to Mikkel and it fixed it. And so I didn't tell her so she was like 15 years old. And so
That's always something a veterinarian would do, Marty. You give away all our trade secrets. One of us might get locked up, but yeah, we. That's why you said if there's a Holocaust of some kind, the end of the world's coming. Find a vet and pull them into your bunker.
absolutely, we'll go rogue and go into these things. We could treat anything, but the question was, do you still do other professional time between street work and other more traditional clinical work as a veterinarian?
I don't do a lot of in-clinic work anymore. Most of my time is spent in the streets or running the charity now. And yeah, I've been lucky enough, fortunate this part of my career where I kind of branch off and do many things. I'm still Netflix's veterinarian, so I still do some script work and on-set work to protect the animals on sets. And the charity is growing so much, it consumes a lot of my time in a good way.
Well, I think too, you're a veterinary medical communicator, so you're a popular person to have on. I'm not even sure we can mention everything that you have coming up, but for documentaries about you and popular to do content, I think for uh, the the pet insurance company. Which one do you work with?
Fetch,
Quan?
yeah. Go to
Fetch.
pet.
So where can they find your content on Fetch at?
Oh, you can go to our website. So their Fetch is our title sponsor, and they're really responsible for the growth of the other cities. So if you go to projectstreetvet.org,
Yeah.
projectvet.org, which is the charity name, you can find a host of information and stats and more information about the people that support us.
Yeah, great people at Fetch. By the way, we have like most industries. One time I spoke at the National Cemetery Funeral and Cremation Association in Vegas as one of the keynote speakers, and you might think, what is I doing? There are 600 pet funeral homes in the United States, and so I was that there was that track. And by the way, all of those people thought that almost all of them also owned human facilities, never on the same building, never on the same pad, but they were saying it's much harder for people to say goodbye to pets than it is to people. And my ears perk up and really, and I said, how many of you agree with that statement? They all raised their hand, and I said, why? And they said, with pets, with people, there's always complicated this history, this fight for what's going to be inherited, and sibling rivalries and duplicity and hidden agendas and posturing for personal gain. And with pets, it's just that pure agape love. But I remember we're asking them like humor that you have inside a funeral home, and they said one of their common things is we're the last people to let you down. And I was an old groaner, and in veterinary medicine, we have this joke between Kwan and Evan Anton and myself, some people that do a lot of media, that I'm the world's sexiest veterinarian, tongue in cheek, and this competition between Kwan and Evan. But you got to have some fun, right? With between
It,
well,
it's
a
all
release, yeah.
it's all fun, right? I I was asked yesterday when I was giving this little talk, what can next generation veterinarians do? And I know this is it could spin off a whole another conversation, but you've been in the biz now over 40 years. I've been in now 25 years. And if you don't take care of yourself, and again, we could have a deep talk about mental health, but if you don't pay attention to self-care and your own mental status, your own emotional health, you won't last long. And I like the analogy of you're flying in an airplane and they're giving the announcements on how to buckle your seatbelt and things you've done 100 times. And of course, if the air mask drops down, what do they tell you to do? They tell you to secure it on yourself first and then help others around you. And I think a profession is very much the same. It's we get so we're spread so thin. We want to help others, and that's how we're wired, right? That those are just kind of the people we are, and our first instinct is to keep helping everybody else and keep giving until you have nothing else to give, and you have to put the mask, the oxygen on yourself every once in a while and take care of yourself before you start helping others around you. So I just implore our next generation to do that, to speak about your issues, to include others in some of your pain, but you carry it around and it will start to eat you up.
Do you remember that movie Up in the Air? I think it had George Clooney in it, where he's this guy and they meet at these fancy clubs, like, here we are in Minneapolis at this real fancy Sky Club here. And he's like, I'm diamond this and platinum this. And I just went over 5 million Delta miles on this actual segment. So I've been through a lot of these. And what you made me think, as a communicator, stuff jumps to you. I've heard that announcement 1,000 times. Bucket, tied across your waist, and do this and do that. And I saw recently where their airbags actually came down on a flight, and only 30% of the people put it over their nose and mouth. So you hear 1,000 times, but it goes in one ear and out the other. And so I think my point of that is, when you say that, don't just hear it. You and I have been real open about mental health issues. I have depression, and you have to do something. Don't just listen to it, to really do something. And Paula, if you'll let me say one other thing here real quick before you jump in. I was just telling Kwan, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I am a huge fan of independent booksellers. So when I wrote one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul pet books, I was actually in Seattle back when Amazon was just a bookseller with a 6-story building down there filled full of books. And I met Jeff Bezos. I was signing books because I knew if I autographed the book, they couldn't send them back. I found out. And I signed books, and I was the chief veterinary officer for Amazon for a while when they were doing content. But we were talking about, there's a bookstore in my town named Bonner Books, and when people order a book from me, I'll do, if they want a personalized autographed copy, I have them contact them, and I go in every so often and sign and autograph these books. And that's something, Paula, I'm not sure what you can do with Book Passage, but what I like about that store too. I see the guy in church. I see the guy at the grocery store. I see the other salesperson at the 4-H meetings. And so there's this kind of little family feeling. And over these years, I've lived up there now, 25 years, he'll have something come in. He goes, "Hey, Becker, you should come in. This is right down your alley, something historical, nonfiction." And so just a sincere plug, Paula, that I would say, even if you weren't hosting this. And I just talked to I don't know, it was yesterday or the day before or something, Kwan, didn't we? Yeah.
No, thank you. We really appreciate it. Yeah, booksellers are the best, and something the A word can't provide is that kind of personalized service, knowing the customers and being part of the community. And it's something Book Passage has prided itself on for over 40 years. But obviously, across the country, there are many, many independent bookstores, and we appreciate your plug and your support. I have a question before we completely wrap up. This is, I believe, Mental Health Awareness Month, and I was wondering if Kwan or both of you could speak to the positive impact, I'm assuming, and I've experienced it, animals and pets have on mental health wellness, you know.
I could start because I wrote a book called The Healing Power of Pets with a New York Times reporter. I can still remember her saying, because I always in my life, if I've experienced it, witnessed it, or intuited it, I figure it must be true. And she said, we can't just say it's true, we have to prove it's true. So, there was trips to the Mayo Clinic and the National Institutes of Health. And I would just say in general, pets just don't make us feel good. They're actually good for us. And whether it's for agoraphobia, whether it's for learning disabilities, whether it's recovery of a heart attack. For example, if you have a heart attack and you have a dog, you're 8 times more likely to be alive a year later. And you think, well, what is that? It's because you get out and exercise with the dog. If they tell you you need to start exercising, you get out and exercise with the dog. We did a thing with NIH one time, a test, and so it was MDs working with DVMs, and we were working on both ends of the leash. You got to lose weight, the pet's got to lose weight. And statistics, about 66% of American people and American pets are overweight, and they were successful. If Kwan and I tell somebody that has a cat that you need to stop smoking because your cat is licking that nicotine off of it, the tar and nicotine off of its coat, and you're harming its health, they'll stop smoking. And with pets, that thing, especially, we saw this during COVID, and you see it now. There's that affection connection that's so nebulous but easily understood by anybody that's felt it. It's so constant. You can't lose it. You can't lose it through illness. You can't lose it through loss of income or a move, a divorce, anything. And so I could go into the biochemical part of it that we know works, but I think we've all seen somebody, and I literally, I'm helping to sponsor a documentary coming out called The Cost of Caring. It's about the high suicide rate in veterinary medicine. And literally a few days ago, talked to a veterinarian that was going to blow their brains out. And they drank a whole bottle of vodka, had the gun, and looked at their dog and said, I can't leave my dog like this. I'm saying that kind of raw and matter of fact, but it was just like a reminder. It's really hard, by the way, Paula, being a veterinarian, because you'll help somebody say goodbye to a family member in a four-legged family member, and then you got to go see a kitten, and then you got to go do surgery. So you're with them emotionally, but you don't fully grieve. And Kwan, I know, will say the same thing. When you lose your own pet as a veterinarian or a veterinary technician or somebody that works in a hospital, you cry buckets of tears like a professional mourner, because you're this release of all this emotion from all these pets you've seen, thousands over a career, that you've administered the final grace or see the light leave from their eyes.
Well, I don't know if I can say any better than that. Marty is really the master communicator when it comes to this subject. He's in fact taught me a lot. I'll just ask a rhetorical question. Do you think someone who's been hooked on every illicit drug you can think of for 15 years could suddenly go clean and sober overnight, cold turkey, after rescuing a puppy from a dumpster?
Whoa.
That is Walter Tinker. And Walter he was dying from years of drug abuse and had tried every therapy session, had taken just about every medication to get him off the medications he was taking. And he found Dinker, this little puppy named Dinker, in a dumpster, rescued Dinker, and he said the day after he cleaned up his act, and 6 years later, when I came across him in an alley, 6 years later, he was still clean and sober.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, that says a lot about the impact on physical health and mental health that animals, pets have for us. Thank you both so much. What a great discussion. I always love it when it's two people of the same profession, but also that you can tell there's that friendship and mentorship in your case, and it just really shines through. Thank you so much, Marty, for doing a great job on the moderating part of all of this. You're fantastic. And people, please remember to go check out that website, Fear fearfreepets.com, correct? And
Wait,
then
I'm an ugly crier. I'm gonna have to talk to Kwan after this, and made it the whole way through till that dang story, Kwan.
I know, right?
Oh, darn you.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. And then thank you, Kwan, not only for the work that you do, that you've inspired others to get involved in and help out with, but for spreading the word through now this book, what it takes to save a life, which, by the way, Kwan, do you have a copy of the book anywhere nearby?
Sadly, I don't. As I said,
And I feel bad because I usually have it behind me on the shelf and I didn't get a hold of one. So I want people to see it. I'm trying to, I can't really tell. Well,
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can.
a lovely cover.
gotcha. But yeah,
The audio, yeah, and it's
Good.
yeah, it's a lovely cover.
Paula,
Um,
Paula,
yeah,
I hate to jump in here again, but I would love everybody that listens to this to order it. And if you have people that are those kind of, because I read James Herriot's books, and that's why I became a veterinarian. And I know there's other anthologies. You know, we talked before this started about several other ones like Dave Barry and other ones. Remember the library cat? And there was the cat that would go into the nursing homes and knew when people were going to die and go in and sit with them. And I'm a sucker for those. But if you have people that love pets and they've got a birthday coming up, or you're thinking about Christmas, contact the Book Passage and get Mr. Kwan to do a personalized autograph copy for them. That's the kind of thing I think when it says, you know, it's got the autograph thing on the front, and they open it up, and you knew you took the extra steps. You just
yeah,
didn't get it somewhere. You took the extra steps to make it really personal, and that way you can also memorialize maybe a pet that's still with them or a pet that's passed.
Paula, I'm going to be
yeah,
up in Cisco within the next 3 weeks doing some street work,
yeah.
and we're gonna connect, and I'm gonna stop by.
That would be great. Yeah, if you shoot us a quick email maybe after this, or tell me and Zach afterwards. We'll work out a time and you can stop by if it's more convenient at the Ferry Building, and we'll get all the books over there. So people, go ahead, put your orders in now. You can do it on our YouTube channel, go to our link to our online store, or go in to either location, Corte Madera, San Francisco, but definitely support this book, support Kwan. And thank you, Marty, again for moderating. Thank you those for joining us live and those joining later for supporting this event. We love it. We appreciate you. Bye-bye.